How's it going, everyone? Ramtide here. For today I wanted to bring you guys a video when it comes to the flanker version of the light tank. Now this is going to be the first in a series that I plan on doing called Pros and Cons. For this particular one, I'm going to be looking over the pros and cons of the flanker light tank and ultimately answering the question as to whether or not it is overpowered. Now, I'm not sure whether or not I will take this series and look over every single particular weapon and variation of the weapons and the vehicles or not, but we'll see where that goes. To start off, I'll give a brief description of the vehicle itself, and then I'll go into the pros and cons, along with whether or not this particular vehicle is overpowered and some of the changes that we may end up seeing in future updates. So the description of this tank is that it's suited for close range combat. It has heavy firepower and the ability to quickly restore mobility, along with being able to deploy anti-tank mines. Now this particular tank is heavily infantry focused. That's where it's going to be able to do its most damage and be the most effective for you and your team. Next, let's talk about pros and cons. First off, we'll talk about the cons. There are several that stand out when it comes to this variant of the light tank. First up, let's talk about the armor. It doesn't have as much armor as the other tanks do, and that makes it weak, especially when it comes to fighting against the other tanks, such as the heavy tank. This also can make this tank susceptible to being destroyed when it comes to infantry while you're being targeted by them, especially when it comes to maps where you'll find yourself in close quarters situations and you'll have enemies on all sides. Another con is that it doesn't have as much damage output potential as some of the other tanks do. This makes the flanker tank highly susceptible to being destroyed when it comes to battling with other tanks. Now these downsides are to be expected, as it is a light tank and its specialty is focusing on infantry. Next up is a few of the pros when it comes to using this variant of the light tank. First off is its ability to really deal with infantry, as it can do this well with its primary and secondary shells. Next up is one of its biggest pros, which is its mobility. Now, as mentioned from the description, it does have the capability to quickly restore mobility. And as you can see right here, my tank becomes immobilized. All I had to do was hit the button. I gained 14 health on top of my mobility. However, in this regard, I decided to just sit here and repair a little bit more. Now, another one of its pros is that it has the ability to drop tank mines. This comes in handy when you flank an enemy team and you can put mines down where their vehicles will end up being, or it can help you out in a tough situation to where a heavy tank or say a howitzer light tank is on your tail. And as an example, you can see right here I'm dropping mines because I was shooting that tank and I saw that he was trying to flank me, so I figured he would come right in that direction, and if I drove up it would help bait him into those mines, and it worked out perfectly in this situation. Now on to the big question as to whether or not this tank is overpowered. And I say without a doubt, this tank is absolutely overpowered. Now the main reason I say this tank is overpowered is primarily because of its secondary shell. As per the description, this tank is supposed to be about close range combat. However, I think it's more close to medium range, which is fine. It's just that its secondary shell has far too much range. I think they need to tone down the secondary shell. As you can see there, I sniped somebody from a decent distance. I can consistently kill people from twice that distance with this shell with ease. Now I have gotten a lot of easy kills using this secondary shell. Compared to the primary shell, the primary does have drop, a lot of it, even though it does have splash damage. But the secondary shell is so accurate, has such range, that it's not even worth using half of the time, the primary shell anyways, when it comes to counteracting snipers or just enemy players that are off in the distance. So based off of that, I think the easiest way to tone down this tank and really balance it out is to work with the secondary shell and tone it down so it's not so effective from distance. This would include lessening its damage output at a distance, along with making it a little less accurate. Now these may not be the only changes that we end up seeing when it comes to the flanker version of the light tank, because we may end up seeing some changes made with the primary shell as well. Maybe the splash damage could be toned down a little bit, damage-wise, not necessarily the radius though. Another thing is whether or not it has too many rounds to start with. As you can see, it has 15 rounds to shoot, and that is a lot. On top of that, you are able to switch from the primary to secondary and start shooting almost immediately. So maybe dropping it down to around 12 shells instead of 15, and making it to where there's about a half a second longer wait between switching shells and being able to fire. Now, I don't think that they should do all of these, as I think just doing a little bit here and there to just slightly lower it down to where you want it is the best way to take this. Because as I've seen with dice, if there's a weapon that needs to be buffed, a lot of times they buff it way too much and then they have to nerf it later on, or if there's a weapon that needs to be nerfed, they nerf it so much that it's rendered pretty much useless when compared to the other weapons within that class, and I don't want to see them start doing that again when it comes to this game as well. So personally, what I would do to balance this tank out would be to lower the accuracy of the secondary shell along with its damage output over range. From there, I would consider dropping the rounds from 15 down to 12. However, there is a problem with doing this as well. That would make this tank far less useful against other tanks, which I think is a problem. So if you lower the rounds, I think you would have to increase the damage potential of each individual round when it comes to armor. Another thing I would think about doing is lowering the accuracy of the primary shell as well, but not dramatically. I think that would really help balance this tank out overall, and it would still make it a viable option when it comes to an anti-infantry vehicle. Anyways, I appreciate you guys for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you have any comments on anything I had to say in this video, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you liked the video, feel free to hit that like button. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button as well if you want to see more. As always, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. RavenProDesign out.